Hello, everybody. Kathy Caprino here, and welcome to another episode of Finding Brave. This episode, I'm thrilled about every episode. I don't have guests that I don't adore, but this one I would say is really supercharging our bravery. And we're going to talk about why that is and what we're talking about today with my amazing guest, Anahita Joon. Hi, Anahita.
Hello, Kathy, and everyone who is with us. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
I'm so honored to have you. And we're talking about how to embody the divine feminine in your leadership and your life. And I just want to jump right in because I don't want us to miss one word of Anahita's story and why you're passionate about talking about this and teaching about this. And I can't wait, but I want to share Anahita's bio. And I love to tell people how I've connected with my guests. So tell me if this is not exactly right, Anahita. I think about maybe 6 months ago, as you were preparing your amazing summit conference, Iconic Leaders Rise, I heard from you. And what I tend to do when I hear from someone who says, would you join us or would you want to have a talk? I go to your stuff. And the first thing I saw was your TEDx talk. And, I've seen a lot of these being a writer on Forbes and all. And I have to say, I was just so riveted. I cried a few tears. I felt it in my solar plexus, what you were talking about. And we're, of course, going to link to it below. But I want everyone to race out and watch that because I think it speaks to not everyone has your story, which we're going to hear, of course. But you're going to tell me what you think. But I think almost every woman on the planet has some piece of the story that we've been suppressed or we've been raised to hide who we really are. That makes you cry even to say it. I don't know. Still. But let me tell everybody all about you. Anahita Joon is a modern day priestess, healer, medicine woman, and credentialed spiritual counselor, born into Iran's Islamic revolution. Her work today is the culmination of over 25 years of intensive study with mystic masters and shamans, social research, and over 10 years of her own teaching and facilitation. As a feminine leadership mentor, Anahita activates the sacred leadership of women, leaving no stone unturned in awakening and unleashing the force of nature every woman carries within. No small thing here going on. No
good stuff.
Oh, wow. Love every word. All right, let's start with what's the story? Tell us a little bit of where you came from. What were the breakdown moments? What was the breakthrough moment? And why do you do this work now?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I feel like it's important now because I've said the story so many times, I spoke about it a little bit on the TEDx stage and I've spoken about it and written about it. And I feel like it's important to say now when I share it, that I share it because we can all find ourselves in each other's stories. So it's not even, because I think I know for myself when I say the same story over and over again, it's like, gosh, I've said this story so many times, but I know why I say it, because it's not even just my story. It's my story to share because of what it offers. And it's really, and it's a journey of, seeking liberation. And like you mentioned, I was born into Islamic Iran. I was born at the height of the revolution and grew up in Iran with, military state, police state, men with guns walking the streets, and just highly oppressive of everything feminine. So if we're fighting for gender equality and gender parity here in the West still, just imagine that it's not a question of your voice. It's not a question of your vote. It's just a question of, if your hair shows, you're going to have a gun pointed in your face. And so that was my experience as a young girl.
Wow.
That, I really had to cover up and don't say this and don't say that and don't dance. Oh, look at the dancers. Aren't they beautiful? But don't be like them because they're whores and they're disrespected. And, oh, did she get raped? Oh, she was asking for it. That was just so, it was permeating just like the air that I breathed. And so, I grew up watching American movies and just thought it was so cool. The freedom, the convertibles, the hair, the short skirts, the sun on the legs, the hair blowing in the wind. And so I moved to the States when I was 14, and it was really interesting because here I was and I had all the freedoms that I had seen in the movies, and you would think that, all right, grab them. But I realized that I actually didn't know how to be free because the oppression was so ingrained and it was so internalized. And so my journey became about how do I liberate myself? And there were many layers. There were, there was my own personal trauma, of course, that I was working along with all of this, which was my mom had not been with me. She left when I was 1, and my father was paralyzed, and there was the war going on my entire childhood, bombs. So it was all of this trauma that I was working with to, heal, while also okay, so I see these girls that I'm going to high school with, and they wear short skirts and they wear lipstick, and how come I find that so appealing, and yet I'm in so much judgment of it? So how can I liberate myself? And so I set on a path of personal development pretty early, at 14, really, and went down that path. I was like the youngest person to ever lead an introduction room at Landmark, and all these things. And then I kept, and then so it was like, okay, let me keep finding things. And one of the places was just that I was so, I ended up getting married to my first love, and that marriage broke up. And that marriage was, when that ended, that was my dark night of the soul, because I had looked for stability. I had so wanted the stability, and it blew up in my face. And right when I was on my knees and I was, pretty much ready to call it quits, what I can only describe as the goddess, the divine feminine, came for me. And she was like, because I was really like, I can't breathe. I don't know how to go on. I'd never experienced stability. And here I was trying to make it, and it blew up. And it was right around, it was 2011 and 2001, not 2011, 2001. Right after 9/11, the 9/11 incident in America. And so she just started coming for me. She started coming to me in my dreams, and I started receiving a lot of downloads about sexual oppression and women and permission. But I was very young, and I did it. And downloads weren't talking about spiritual downloads. They talked about so freely now. They weren't spoken of then. So I didn't know what was happening.
And there's so many questions, and I don't want to interrupt you, but let me just, for the listeners, when you say download, and do you mean there's a knowingness of information that simply appears? That simply is there.
Knowledge, knowing,
right. Wisdom.
It was there. It was coming out through my hands. I was poetry writing. It was just coming down,
Did you have a concept of what divine goddess was, or you said, what is this? And then you searched to understand.
Ish. I was at the time studying with Marianne Williamson, and then I found Michael Beckwith. And so I had spiritual mentors. Now they weren't specifically talking about the divine feminine, but there was no, I would have referred to her as the goddess at the time, I'm having an experience of meeting the goddess, because I was waking up in the middle of the night, having orgasms, just crazy, wild, tantric sort of energetic initiations.
And being such a suppressed woman, did you say, oh God, I'm going crazy, this is a psychotic break? Or did you know? How did you I'm a spiritual person, I've done a ton of research and have had my own outer body amazing experiences, but I don't think I would know this is the goddess. I wouldn't give language to that. How did you?
It was just being written through my hands, Kathy. It was not at all an experience of the mind. So you have to understand, I was I was on my knees saying, I want out.
Yeah.
So when this energy started coming in, I was like, life, there was something to engage with. There was something life-giving and life-affirming. And so I was playing with it. And that was the time that I had a good friend who I was on a spiritual path with. And she revealed to me that she was an exotic dancer. And long story short, I went to see her dance and began to have all of my constructs of what a virtuous woman, what a good woman would be like, just blow up, because I respected her and loved her, and she was educated, and I had lived my whole life to be a good girl. Be a good girl, do the things, do the right things, serve people, be a feminist, get married, all the things, right? And after that, it didn't happen right away. A couple years passed, and eventually I was guided by that inner guidance that I would call the goddess, the divine feminine, to become an exotic dancer. And it was not what I wanted to do. At all. My ego was having a very hard time because I was a staunch feminist and and my parents are professors, and it was just like, what?
Oh my gosh.
I'm
taking notes because I have so many questions. Well, let me ask you this one. I think people would say, what do you mean you got guidance that you didn't want to take? And I later I want us to explore that, because
Yeah.
often spiritual gurus will say you will know when it's the right guidance because it feels right. Sometimes it doesn't feel right. Sometimes it stretches you so far out from who you think you are that you would say, I don't want to do that. What do you mean? Would you agree?
Right. Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, it's the heroine's journey, right? I mean, it was really me saying yes to my own adventure of this life.
Right.
What Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey, and
Right.
it was see, I was already a student. I had been working on myself for many years. So when I said yes to being an exotic dancer, I was 24. I'd been on the path of personal development since I was 14, and I had been on a spiritual path strictly for about 3 or 4 years. I was a meditator. I was reading sacred text. I was very introspective, and I had a rich inner life. It wasn't like I didn't know what that was. I did know what that was. I woke up, I had, my early 20s, I had 2 jobs. I would wake up in the morning, light a candle, drop to my knees, pray, meditate, then go work at Starbucks before I went to the office. So it was like, I had that rich inner life. That's why I knew what that was. So when I went into this, what I thought was a restaurant to get a waitressing job, and it turned out to be a gentleman's club, and I said, well, do you need waitresses? And the owner said, no, but you're very beautiful. You can dance if you want. And I was like, I mean, the immediate thing was just like, wait, is my stomach too fat? Like, that was like, it was like, can I? Because as I walked in, there was these double doors. So I walked in thinking it was a restaurant, and there was this other door. And between the first door and the second door were pictures of women on poles that said the most beautiful women in the world. And I was like, what? And I walked in, and there was like this woman like twisted up into the pole. And as I walked towards the kitchen to see if they needed any servers, and
What a story.
so I went home, and I meditated and walked in the woods for like 2 weeks, just like, I don't know, should I do this? And it was very clear. The guidance, I'm clairaudient, so I hear guidance. I audibly hear guidance. And it was just very clear. You will go and you will claim your freedom and you will send it back to your ancestors. And it was very, very clear. And so once that came in, then my ego was really challenged because, like I said, I'd been receiving all of this spiritual information, like all of this knowledge about oppression and sexual power, and like, or how organized religions has been controlling women by making sexuality wrong. Like, I had all of this understanding, knowing, but I thought that then I should be doing what I'm doing now, because I was like, well, why do I know all of this then? If I'm not a teacher, what, I'm going to go be a stripper?
So you mean that you understood the call, but you wanted to bypass that step.
I didn't understand that it was necessary.
Right.
Because
you heard what guidance said, this is what you need to do, but you thought to yourself, why do I have to go there? Right.
Right. Until she said, you will get your freedom and you will send it back to your ancestors. And it wasn't until like a few years down where I really, as I went deeper into the journey and exploring the shadow and understanding power dynamics between genders and just all of these things. And I was still studying, I was still on my path. I became a yoga teacher. I was teaching yoga. I was coaching women. I was mentoring some of the women at the club. They then became yoga teachers, and they're like, I'm still in touch with some of them, but like a decade later. And it was as the journey went on, I knew that it would become a significant part of how I would serve in the world. But it's like, I forgot all those downloads because I was so in it.
Yeah.
I knew the information, but I forgot that like there had been this time where I received all of this, and this was about the embodiment and integration of what was just information and actually becoming the living information, which is what my journey was.
Now I've got to learn here. I have all sorts of ideas about what the living reality of being a exotic dancer is. And some of my assumptions are, while it can be freeing and beautiful and an expression of who you really are, it's also you are receiving the projection from men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm guessing it couldn't all have been beautiful, right?
I mean, that's interesting, because to me, it's like, to me, the shadow is beautiful. To me, all of it is beautiful. All of it is sacred. I bow to all of it. So yes, all of it is beautiful, right? And that's like,
Even, I mean, I'm resisting because,
yeah.
for instance, when I've put out things about feminism, I've gotten the most vitriolic, scary hate. And I'm sure you understand.
Yeah.
I would not call that beautiful. I would call that the absence of light. I mean,
You're
some
right.
people believe in evil.
Yes.
I don't know that I don't even
So
want to
here's
say
the thing.
Yeah.
It can be the absence of light, but I have learned, and like you said, I've been a student of shamanism for many years. I have learned to bow deeply to that, what I would describe as the shadow. That even
to bow
though
deeply, is that what you said?
to bow deeply,
What does
because
it
not
mean?
because I want, because it has purpose. It's like if we don't acknowledge the shadow, if we don't acknowledge this, what is actually currently out picturing in our political scenes in our country, in the US, like you can see the shadow is fully expressed. And it's because it's been unacknowledged for so many years.
Right.
So I had a spiritual experience once with when I was with my shaman, and it was an experience of, I ended up being at a retreat with a man who had definitely crossed some boundaries with me. He had groped me and grabbed me, and he was like a boyfriend of another woman. And I got to this place that I thought was going to be a safe place, and it was his house. And all my stuff came up, and through that experience of really me wrestling with like myself, of how do I want to be here? How do I surrender to my experience? God, why is he here? Like all of this stuff. And because I could tell that he really doesn't like women. He had a mother wound. He had a really deep mother wound and really doesn't like women. And that was a source of his groping and like what he had done with me. And I just really got it. Like the shadow, we can't do this. It doesn't work. The more we do this, the more we're actually separating from ourselves. The more we do this, the more embracing our own totality and our own power. So when you say it couldn't have all been beautiful, it was not one dimension. It was not one tone. It wasn't just me it was me definitely like experiencing liberation and freedom and transmitting like, the archetype of like the sexual priestess, the temple priestess, and having these very tantric energetic exchanges with the men who would become mesmerized. Like they would say they're in love with me and they were like ready to give me everything, and I would be like, no, this, like, I was actually giving you this because I knew you needed the energy to be enlivened by me and my eroticism and like letting you look into my eyes while I'm in ecstasy. But no, you're not in love with me. Like, go back to your girlfriend. But so it wasn't just that, right? There was also the shadow. There was also like, what am I going to stay here? Like, how long am I going to do this? Like, do I ever get to stop?
How often would you ask yourself that?
About once every 6 months, 6 to 9 months, because I left a lot. I left to go like study in ashrams and leave and study with shamans, and I would always put my stuff in storage and say, okay, like we'll see where I go. Maybe I'll end up in India. Like who knows where I'll be? And then the thing would be done, and it would be like, yep, you go back. And I was like, like how much am I going to go back? And ultimately, it was what I got. When I was able to stop, Kathy, was when I got, because I'd always had these duality within myself, that from growing up in the Islamic culture, like I was I'm hoping you can still hear me.
I'm just going to pause you for a minute because I want to change the light. Can you hear me? I got all dark in here and I don't like that. There we go. How about that? Can you hear me? Are you there? Hey. All right, you're back. I paused the recording because I was getting all dark in here. It was weird. The lighting. All right. Where were we before I unpaused?
Do you know where we were?
Was it?
I don't know when it stopped recording. I was talking about that growing up in Islam, like I was always fighting with these dualities. That's kind of like what I remember saying. But I don't know if you heard that.
You were saying, I always wondered, when can I go back?
When can I stop?
When can I stop?
Got it.
So I will ask you a question so we can segue here.
how were you able to stop?
Yeah.
You could go there. Yeah.
Let's do
What
that.
was the completion?
All right. So let me understand this, Anahita. Gosh, I've got a million hours of questions. So while you were doing this, you embraced it as beautiful. You embraced it as necessary. You believed the wisdom that was coming to you. But at the same time, you'd every 6 months say, um, when can I move on from this, right? When can
Right.
I, in your mind, did you have a place, I don't mean physical place. I mean, did you have a vision for who you were going to be after all of this journeying to and
Some version of what I'm doing now. I mean, I knew my work because I had been in personal development from such a young age. I knew that that's like, I would be a coach or an author or a
do
teacher.
that?
Like I knew that. But the thing is, the reason that I kept saying, when will I be done, was because my ego was still struggling with it. It was like another year in my 20s, another year in my 20s. Oh my God, am I ruining my life? Like, what if I'm wrong? What if this is not part of my divine path? What if this is not my hero's journey? Like, am I completely ruining my life?
Wow.
And and the thing is, when I was able to stop, here's the thing, having grown up in Iran, having been such a lover of God and all that is sacred, and being told that some essential parts about me, like my sexuality, my freedom, my dance, like everything that was feminine was wrong. I really, it was so heightened. And I know that women in the West experience this as well, because pretty much every organized religion says, like your sexuality is, you're either a virgin or a mother, and it's all for your husband. Go. That's what all organized religion teaches us. So for me, it was, the time I spent dancing was about reconciling these two parts of myself. I could not understand how I could be such a devoted being to all that is sacred, and how I could enjoy being wrapped around the pole, mostly naked. How could I possibly be both of these? And when I was able to stop, when it was so clear, like, you're done, like I had a shift to go to that night, and I was like, I'm done.
Wow.
And it was that it was so integrated that I was no longer in conflict with these two parts, that I could stand in the light of day, show my heart, show my spiritual teachers, this is who I am. This is all of me. And it wasn't until I could fully own, like, these two pieces. One piece that I would have said is like shadowy, and like, I can't show people that that's a part of me. Until I could hold it all, then it was like, great, now you're complete.
Wow, I love it. It's so powerful. Let me ask this, and then we're going to talk about what is the divine feminine in leadership. What holds women back, which I think you really articulated pretty darn well. But I do want to ask you this. It's the trained therapist in me, and it's, I'm writing a book with HarperCollins Leadership about the most powerful you, which I think you are talking about exactly. And I'm framing it as the 7 power gaps that professional women face, all women face. But what I talk about, the first chapter, is you are what your childhood taught you to be. Oops, there's my cell phone ringing, turning that off. Thank you. You are what your childhood taught you to be, unless you've healed it and unlearned it. And I'm really going to that place. It's what we have to unlearn.
Right.
But I want to ask you, you said your mother left when you were 1, but when you tell your story, and even watching your TEDx talk, I'm dying to know, what were your parents like that you can remember? And then when you embarked on this new journey, what did they do? What did they say? What did your family do? Did they tell you? Did they say she's lost her mind? She's ostracized.
Well, my mother wasn't around. So growing up, my mother wasn't around. She was gone. And my father,
she left, divorced.
She left my father's house. She left my father and I in Iran. For a little while she did, and then she moved to the States, which is how I was able to consequently come to the States. So she was pretty cold. She's been working on herself for a long time. We've been working on ourselves together, but she was very wounded. She had her own trauma. And so she really couldn't, she was very cold, very cold. There was no maternal anything. And my father, he was in a wheelchair, but he was warm and very affectionate and very sweet, but yet still, steep in ancient Middle Eastern culture of like, it's great if you like to dance, but you can't become a dancer because they're whores. It was like, it was interesting, and they were both Western educated. They both had gone to university and had PhDs from England. It was like they were as progressive as you could get in Iran. they went to Europe all the time. And when I started dancing, I mean, I told my mother, we were in a process of healing our relationship, and which has been like a 25 year, 30 year thing. 30, oh my God, 25 years. Yeah, 25 years. And so she just was like, okay, she was able to do this with me
That's
a lot
wild.
through my 20s. Yeah. She came and watched me dance. I remember she came and watched me with her sister, my aunt.
Oh my gosh.
And do you know what they said to me?
What?
They said, you are young and you are beautiful. And God, if I could have done this when I was young and beautiful.
Wow.
And I will say, this is probably the disclaimer, that I was fortunate enough to work at a club that was very rare, very unique. We wore pasties and bottoms, and there was no private dances. There was nothing.
Nobody assumed you were going home with them?
No, I had a friend who did, and our friendship ended as soon as I started dancing. But it was a club from across from the U.S. Pentagon in Arlington. Like, I mean, it was very, it was very, very
all right. That
strict.
Explains a little bit.
And PG.
All right. Oh my gosh. What a story. And what, what I just, folks, so you can hear what's going on in my brain, I'm not, there's like content and process. I listen for content, the words that you're saying, but also the process, what it means about you, the way you live, the way you operate, the way you approach life. And that's what's making me real. I mean, I think if all of us were able to take, now many of us cannot in our lives devote the time you have to spiritual practice, to meditation, to traveling. We can't, we won't, whatever. But I do think that 7 lessons we can learn from what you said are, first of all, becoming a student of yourself, becoming a student of what it is to live today, meaning all the forces that shape us.
Yes, I want to say something, because you said we can't, we won't, whatever. We don't have the time to devote. And I just want to totally challenge that, because, it's not like I wasn't taught either go become a doctor, either go become a lawyer, either become a professor, or go get a 9 to 5. I just had something that was more urgent inside of me. And unfortunately, I think our society has taught us to hush that, to hush it, to then take the antidepressant pills, take the anti-anxiety medication, drink 2 glasses of wine every night, whatever it takes so that you don't have to feel how out of alignment your life is. And so what I did, Kathy, it wasn't easy. Like, my mother was the only one who knew. Nobody else knew. My father didn't know. He didn't know what I was doing for a decade. It wasn't until like 6-7 years after I stopped that I told him. So when you say like we don't have the time to do that, I don't agree.
I didn't say time. I purposely didn't bring it up.
You said something. You said we can't.
We can't. Yeah. And this is what I want to push back on. I really do. And I think this is why I'm popular as a career coach, but transformative as a therapist career coach. Let me just explain a little personally. I was married to, happily for many years, a famous jazz percussionist, and he traveled a lot, and I was a vice president, and we had little kids. One thing that used to piss me off, I traveled a lot. I've traveled the world in many ways, Malaysia, Europe, lots of places. But people would say to me, and the kids were tiny, and they would say, why don't you travel with your husband? And I would get so infuriated, Anahita, because that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be with we did travel with them, but I didn't want to pick them up and go to Malaysia. I didn't want to pick them up and go in the middle of school. So I'm getting agitated, because when I say can't and won't, and I'm really specific about this, there are things that we value sometimes, and we are conscious about that. And that's okay. Meaning I didn't want to pull my kids out of their routine and go travel as much as I would have loved to just go.
Well, that's fine.
When I say can't or won't, I mean that there are conscious decisions we make that aren't always about suppression and unconscious suppression. Do you know what I mean? Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, of course. Because I'm dealing with that right now. I have a little baby, as you know.
6-month baby.
But what I'm talking about is not everybody's journey has to look like mine.
Right.
What I'm saying is, like, I don't have the same kind of, I used to be off on retreats. Like, doing this, like not just leading my own retreats, but like attending this and attending that. And I don't get to do any of that. But you know what? When I get up to nurse in the middle of the night, I read my spiritual text.
Right.
So what I'm saying is,
so my
there is
point,
a
just to be
choice.
clear, was some people can't pick up and do what you did.
Right.
And I don't want anyone to take away from this podcast that we have to live the life the way you lived it
No.
to be
Yes.
able to connect. So back to that point, I feel that what we all can do is within our framework, within what we value, within what we feel is important, we still can find time for ourselves and to listen and to disconnect and to connect to what is higher level wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I find that everybody can do that. But what people do is, well, I can't live the life Anahita lived. I can't pick up and go. And we're not suggesting that they should, right?
Right. But
Am I getting it?
Yes, but I really feel strongly that most of the can'ts are in our mental constructs, because I'm really just saying, like, to say yes to the hero's journey, to say yes to the heroine's journey. I have a friend, he's a physician. He was a teaching physician at a university hospital. He has 2 babies. I mean, do you think that the medical system is completely broken, right? So the more that he woke up, the more that he felt like he couldn't stay at this hospital. And he didn't feel like he could say yes to his hero's journey. He didn't feel like he could like quit the hospital with 2 kids and, a wife and whatever. But he did. And in that, like in his time of like just coming to the internal, I'm going to walk away, a better opportunity came for him that said, okay, now you can move into functional medicine, and now you can move into this, and now you can, and it's been just spinning to where now he's like, he's totally going to these other places that he would have never been able to go. So I'm saying so much of it is the mental. I have 2 kids,
100%.
I have 2 babies and a wife. I can't leave this job.
Well,
it's like, say yes. Yeah.
On your Iconic Leaders Rise Summit, which everyone should listen to if they can, I talked about, I had that moment, the dark night into the light, where I thought I couldn't leave my vice presidency because that was the safety and security and the money.
Right.
And then after being laid off, thank God, thank the goddess, because then I could say, I really want to help people.
Yeah.
And then then thank goodness at age 41, it opened the path. But I truly did not have the courage or the power to say no to that before.
Yes.
Before the breakdown moment.
Divine time.
So good. Now, talk to us. We only have a few more minutes because I just so love your journey. What do you think has to happen? What is divine feminine in leadership? What is it? What do we have to do to kind of claim it or enliven it? Tell us.
Yes. Well, I speak about the divine feminine, but it's really just claiming our divinity. Really, our relationship with ourselves is the source of everything. So if we can come home to our sacredness, to our own divinity, and what I love teaching women to actually understand how we are an embodiment of that which is sacred in female form. And there are 7 pillars that I feel like are essentials for this. I know you have your 7, right?
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, so the first is understanding our unique feminine energetic codes. So understanding, because one of the places that women get really hushed and broken is still to this day, the number 1 place that women get shamed around is body image and our looks. Like, if I was reading this article, Greta Thunberg, like they're attacking her looks. These male chauvinists are attacking the 16-year-old activist looks to be able to try to cut her down. So it's the number 1 place that a woman can be shamed is around her physicality and body image. And if a woman can understand her sacred feminine energetic codes given to her by Mother Nature, right? We're all created by Mother Nature. When we understand that Mother Nature doesn't make mistakes, when we understand that she made us just like she made the mountains and the rivers and the bees and the flowers, and be able to how to discern that, to fully embody our energetic frequency as a creation of Mother Nature. That's number 1, because it really, really brings us home to ourselves. We stop cutting ourselves down, looking in the mirror. Oh, this should have been this way. This should have been that way. Oh, the women in your family have these butts and they have these noses and whatever, It's endless, because most women look in the mirror and think it should have been, it could have been, some version of this. And so that's the number 1, to be able to get that you're an embodiment of that which is divine in female form. Then the next is healing the mother wound. And, it's a really critical part as well. So healing the mother wound has four sub sort of quadrants. And that is your relationship with your earthly mother, being able to forgive her, understand that she was on her own human journey, that she has her own limitations, and that it was perfectly ordained for you to come into your own actualization. So no victim in that relationship. You can't hold victim with your mother. And then establishing a relationship with the divine mother. So really finding an aspect, whether it's Mother Mary, whether it's Mother Mary Magdalene, whether it's Lakshmi, whether, an aspect of female divinity that you can have a relationship with, whether it's Mother Isis, who was like the first one that really came for me, that there's this place where you can source into the divine, connect into the divine, and it's motherly and it's female in its energy, that you have a relationship with that. And then it's your relationship with the earth. Your relationship with the earth, this is another aspect of healing that mother wound. And then it's the ability to mother ourselves. So because we're so stuck in this patriarchal paradigm that says you're not enough, it's not enough, work harder, do more, prove yourself, achieve, the ability to mother ourselves is so key. And the way to do that is to ask the question just throughout the day, to stop, breathe, and say, what would nurture me right now? What would nurture me? And give that to yourself. And then that's what completes the process of healing the mother wound, which is the second pillar. And then we go on, and it's the aspect of releasing the good girl, which is what I mentioned was part of my journey. So releasing the good girl and embracing the wild woman, and really understanding that none of us are just one thing. So being able to fully embody all of these different aspects of us, whether it's the sexual siren, whether it's the child, whether it's the wise woman, the crone, being able to fully embody, but really releasing that good girl, because that's how we've been controlled, is, get your approval from outside. And so the wild woman is really the one that says, middle finger to you, I don't give an F. I am perfect. I am what I am. I don't need your permission. Then the next, then it's healing the bloodlines, ancestral stuff. So really like releasing what mothers, grandmothers, like what we don't need, that we're still carrying in our DNA. Then the next is erotic activation. So Kundalini, understanding the divine feminine in the body, which is the Shakti, right? So it arises in the pelvis, it gushes up through the spine, and it like blasts open every energy center until it blossoms at the crown. And understanding how to work with that divine feminine force in the body, like how to work with that and what it means, because to be erotic is actually to be aligned with the power of nature. Nature is erotic. Nature creates boom, 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 a bazillion bumblebees in one day, Right. So that's what that is. And then the two final aspects, one is sisterhood. So really healing the wounds between women, and the intimacy is what really heals trauma. So like all the trauma of not being seen, not being met, not being celebrated, being violated, all of those things so profoundly and gracefully heal when we come into intimacy of a sacred sisterhood. They just do, to be witnessed. I mean, I'm getting chills even as I'm saying this.
I'm getting choked up all over the place.
And then the final one is the, I know you know this, is shadow work, really meeting the aspects of ourselves that we've said no to, and being able to fully wrap our arms around them. So those are the pillars of embodying the divine feminine, and they're so awesome and juicy and life-giving.
I feel as you read them, there isn't one that isn't absolutely essential for what, from my perspective, it's to live the life you are meant to live on this planet at this time.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you have a happy marriage, be a happy parent, be a vice president, have it be successful? Sure. Without these things, but it's the healing. It's the wounds we carry that we're not even aware that we carry them.
Mm-hmm.
And everything you're touching on is healing some aspect of a wound. I want to ask this because I know this is a lot for people, especially, frankly, some of the buttoned up professional women I work with. They will hear you talk about eroticism and their head's going to explode. So can you do this for me? And then I have to let you go to your baby, or anything else that you're going to be doing. When you talk about what you were led to do, I was going to say forced. You weren't forced in any way, shape, or form, but led. In terms of the eroticism, if we could dimensionalize that and make it really clear and concrete to people, what do you think that journey of, I don't even want to butcher it with the words I'm trying to use, but tap into your own erotic essence. How does that show up every day in your work, for instance. What I'm trying to do is help people, women, understand when you do this work, these 7 pillars, and when you tap into that erotic Kundalini nature, essence, force, how does it show up in your life every day that shows that you're different from 10 years ago? Can you answer
Yeah.
that?
Sure. I mean, people will obviously recognize you, but here's what I want to say. This is what people can relate to. Anytime you experience stress, let's say you're at work and you have a stressful moment and you feel your solar plexus tighten, or your heart tightens, or your womb tightens, or when you have a really phenomenal lovemaking session and you just feel so unwound. Have you ever heard this term about women? Oh, she's wound up tight. She's really tightly wound, right? You've heard that. You've heard
Yes.
that. We've all heard it, right?
Aspects of tight. Yeah.
Right. So to be erotically activated is to be unwound. And that tight woundness, that tightness, she's tightly wound, means her power is coiled up and it's being scrunched, versus if she's not tightly wound, it's freely flowing through her body. And I work with lots of some corporate women. I do work with some corporate women, but lots of former like high level executives and CEOs and corporate girls who come and they're like, help me,
and spinning like a wound up top.
Well, and it's just phenomenal. What I can say is the most is that we are magnetic. We're magnetic beings, right? We know our bodies are made of mostly water. And we know Dr. Emoto's water study, right? When you put words on the water, the image of the water changes. The word affects the consciousness of the water. Are you familiar with this study?
Oh, we're going to link below.
Yes. That. So you can put like the word love or the word gratitude and the word hate on a glass of water. And under a microscope, you can see that the molecules, the water changes. So the water actually changes based on the word, the language, the consciousness that's being put on it. Now, our bodies are mostly water. And so therefore, our bodies are the attracting field. So when you're saying, how would somebody know? I would say a woman I worked with recently, big former marketing executive. Now she's the CEO of her own company. And, she just came in and she was like, God, Anahita, I'm so tired of trusting. Because, she's the main breadwinner for her 3 kids and her husband. And I'm so tired of trusting, and she's working so hard and adrenal fatigue.
And that what she's longing for will come to
yeah, that she doesn't have to like worry because she's holding everything. And through the process and the work, and she said, I said, so why did you come into the work? And she said, honestly, it was just a gut feeling. I just knew it was time. We'd known each other for a couple of years. She's like, I've been watching you and I just know it's time for me to come in. And at the end of our work together, she is working less hard. She has a better marriage, and her business has more than tripled in revenue, in its monthly revenue, where it's multiple, over 6 figures every month. And she's not working as hard. She's playing with her bunnies. She's going to national parks with her babies, and she's running her company, but it's a different paradigm altogether. So it's not one that's going to be understood with the mind. I would say that if you're listening to this, you should be paying attention to if there were parts of your body that responded to the dialogue that you and I have had, Kathy, like that we have had. Right. The body knows, the body responds. And if there's parts of you that are remembering, because your body knows this truth, if it's saying yes, then it's like, okay, how do I get on this path? How do I shift my paradigm?
Oh, can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
I don't talk much about what I'm going to share. Most people wouldn't know it, I think, but the way I view it, I have seen past lives that I've had, and some of them ended brutally. Like I think the vision I had was that I was a priestess sharing, and my throat was cut. And, for years I had infections of the trachea where I couldn't speak, right? But I've seen other past lives that were joyful, and I could feel what it was to be in that body. And it was so different from the body I'm in and the mind I'm in. And so it's just very telling. So I believe in past lives, that we have them, and I believe in future lives. What's your belief about that, given all your work?
Well, I'm right there with you. I don't actually, because I don't believe time exists. It's a man-made construct. I believe that all of them are happening simultaneously.
I get it.
And so, of course, we are multidimensional beings, and we're living, we have, of course, we have multiple experiences. And so I know of many sort of priestess lifetimes for myself. And I think that's actually a large thing for many women who are not feeling like they can give themselves permission to step forward to speak about what they really care about or show themselves and who they really are, not fully, is because there is some stuff from other lives that they're holding that is, really like grabbing them. And for me, one of them was when I started doing the divine feminine work. I mean, it was just, Kathy, it was the hardest thing for me to get paid. I mean, I was literally changing people's lives, and they would give you they would introduce me. This is my mentor. She's changed my life. And I could not, I would just take such small amounts of money.
Wow.
And it was really interesting to then connect to another lifetime, what you would call a past life, where I was doing that work, and I had a vow to not receive money for it. And so when I could see that and I could break that vow in this life, this is a different life. I'm not carrying that vow. This is a life where I get to hold and demonstrate that the value of the feminine, that I get to hold, that it has value, then it just completely transformed. And when I talk to other women, it's like, I abused my power in another life, so I don't trust my power. I don't trust my sexuality because I abused it in another life. I was prosecuted for showing my powers and my magical connections to nature and the stars and whatever. So I've shut it down. I've closed my third eye and I get headaches all the time. I mean, it's like, we're all in this together, and we're all getting liberated together. It's definitely all of us together.
I wish I could speak to you for another 100 hours. We'll have to make that happen some other time.
Oh, you're so awesome. This has been so great.
I love the bravery. I love the openness. I can feel and see the work you've done to liberate your soul, basically, is how I see it.
Thank you.
Who you are meant to be in the fullest expression of who you are. Thank you for joining. So where do people learn? Where do they pay you? Where do they get these 7 amazing pillars? Tell us. Give me all the information. Give us all the information.
Yes. Well, you said they can watch my TED Talk. You'll put the link on it. And my signature program, which is a program for leading women, emerging leaders, and established leaders, where we really fully embody the divine feminine in our leadership, is so juicy, so celebratory of your essence. I'm so proud of this program. I can't even. I mean, we've attracted high-level teachers, that come, that I see as queens, and they come and they're like, oh my God, the divine mother's coming through you. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know, but okay, thank you. I'm just showing up in service. So the program is called Beauty Unleashed, and it's really fully understanding that beauty is not just what we have been taught it is, but it's the full spectrum. And so Unleash, beautyunleashedprogram.com. That's the page. And then you can go to Anahita Joon. There's applications to the program. You can email us. You can find out when we have a free training, so you can just attend and be in the vibration. There's free assessment on my website on how to activate your feminine superpowers. You can take that and just be quietly receiving some of what I share if you're not ready to jump in. But definitely stay connected.
Work with you live in person?
Yeah, all of my work has a live component. So the Beauty Unleashed program starts with 3 days live together in Colorado, and then we meet 3 times a month live, and there's a sisterhood, and they get bonded right away, and there's other coaches that coach them in addition to me in the program, and then we come again in month 5 of 6, and we have another 3 days in the Rocky Mountains. And it's just so amazing what I have seen these women create for themselves, and through the process of saying yes, and through the process of watching other women. When you see another woman really go for it, really challenge herself, really show herself, really give herself permission to step forward, you're like, okay, well, if she can do it, why can't I do it? And then it just raises up the whole field, and everyone goes, boop, 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 and it's really fun. It's really fun.
Oh my gosh. Everybody, check it all out, please. If any of this resonated with you, any piece, and you'll probably be a little afraid. That's a good sign.
That is a great sign.
I'm so excited, but I'm afraid. Yay, that you're in the right place. Thank you, my dear. I just love speaking with you. Wow, I love learning from you.
Oh, you're such a love. Thank you so much for having me and for your good work in the world. I'm so glad we're connected.
Dear. I am too. Love to you and the family. And I hope everybody, let us know what you feel, what you learn, what you hear, what you resist, what made you nervous. Please tell us, please. We both love to learn and share. Everybody. Find brave this week and have a wonderful week, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.